Have you ever argued with someone who simply refused to change their mind? No matter how much evidence you showed them, no matter how many facts you presented, they just wouldn't budge. Maybe it was politics. Maybe it was a conspiracy theory. Maybe it was a sports debate. And afterward, you probably found yourself thinking, how can someone ignore all that evidence? But here's the uncomfortable truth. They were probably asking the exact same question about you. Because the tendency to reject information that challenges our beliefs isn't a flaw that affects only certain people. It's something built into every human brain. And throughout history, it has shaped arguments, movements, decisions, and even disasters. Take the Space Shuttle Challenger. In January 1986, engineers raised concerns about critical rubber seals known as O-rings. The weather was unusually cold, and some feared the parts might fail. Warnings were given. Concerns were documented. The information was there. Yet decision-makers were heavily influenced by previous successful launches. Evidence supporting launch seemed more convincing than evidence suggesting caution. The launch proceeded. 73 seconds later, Challenger broke apart. 7 astronauts lost their lives. Many factors contributed to the disaster, but investigators later concluded that important warnings had not received the attention they deserved. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't a lack of information. It's ignoring information that challenges what we already believe. And that brings us to a powerful psychological force known as confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is our tendency to seek out, notice, and remember information that supports what we already believe while ignoring information that challenges those beliefs. In other words, we're not always searching for the truth. We're often searching for confirmation. Imagine you've decided a restaurant is terrible. Maybe you had one bad experience. Or maybe someone told you it wasn't very good. Either way, you've made up your mind. Now imagine you go back. Suddenly, every mistake stands out. The slow service, the cold food, the rude employee. You notice all of it. But when something goes right, you barely pay attention. The good experience doesn't fit the story you've already created. And that's confirmation bias. You might assume people ignore facts because they aren't intelligent. But psychology suggests something deeper. When new information challenges a belief we care about, it creates psychological discomfort. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. It's the uneasy feeling that occurs when reality conflicts with what we think is true. Imagine believing you're an excellent driver. Then someone points out that you've caused several accidents. That information doesn't fit the image you have of yourself. Your brain now has a choice. Either adjust your belief or reject the information. For many people, rejecting the information feels easier, because beliefs rarely remain just beliefs. Over time, they become part of our identity. Political opinions, religious beliefs, sports teams, personal decisions. The longer we hold a belief, the more it becomes connected to who we are. And when that happens, changing our minds can feel less like learning something new and more like losing a piece of ourselves. One famous psychology experiment, the Wason selection task, revealed just how naturally this happens. Participants were asked to test a simple rule. To discover whether the rule was correct, they could choose different pieces of evidence. Most people searched for evidence that could confirm the rule. Very few searched for evidence that could disprove it. Think about that. If you genuinely want to know whether something is true, one of the best strategies is to look for evidence that could prove you wrong. But our brains naturally do the opposite. We search for evidence that proves us right. Imagine a detective investigating a crime. Instead of examining every suspect, they focus on the person they already believe is guilty. Every clue supporting that theory gets attention. Every clue contradicting it gets ignored. The detective becomes more confident, but not necessarily more accurate. And that's exactly how confirmation bias works. At this point, you might think that more evidence should solve the problem. After all, facts are facts. Surely, if two people see the same evidence, they'll move closer to the truth. But psychology has shown that reality isn't always that simple. People don't always evaluate facts objectively. We often filter facts through the lens of what we already believe. And in today's world, that problem may be stronger than ever. Confirmation bias existed long before the internet, but technology has given it a powerful new ally. Imagine two people searching the same topic online. At first, their search results may look similar, but then the algorithms begin paying attention. They notice what each person clicks, what they watch, what they share. Over time, the information each person sees begins to change. Weeks pass, months pass, and before long, both people are living in completely different information worlds. One person's feed is filled with articles, experts, and opinions supporting one viewpoint. The other person's feed is filled with experts and evidence supporting the opposite viewpoint. Each person becomes increasingly convinced they're seeing the truth. Meanwhile, opposing viewpoints become increasingly rare, not because they don't exist, but because they're no longer being shown. Psychologists call this an echo chamber, a place where the same ideas are repeated over and over until they feel unquestionably true. And here's the most important part. The people inside these bubbles usually don't realize they're in one, because confirmation bias rarely feels like bias, feels like common sense, feels like being right. The good news is that confirmation bias can be reduced, not eliminated, but reduced. The first step is recognizing that it exists, because the biggest mistake people make is believing they're immune to it. One of the most effective strategies is surprisingly simple. Actively seek out information that challenges your beliefs. Not weak arguments. The strongest arguments you can find. The arguments that make you uncomfortable. The arguments that force you to think. Ask yourself a simple question. What evidence would make me change my mind? If the answer is nothing, then you're probably no longer following evidence. You're protecting an identity. Changing your mind isn't weakness. It isn't failure. It's growth. Every major discovery in history began because someone was willing to question what everyone else accepted as true. Progress requires curiosity. Progress requires humility. And sometimes progress requires admitting we were wrong. So the next time you see someone rejecting evidence that seems obvious to you, remember this. Their brain is doing exactly what human brains evolved to do. Protect existing beliefs. Seek familiar answers. Avoid uncomfortable uncertainty. But here's the real challenge. Instead of asking why other people won't change their minds, ask yourself, when was the last time you changed yours? When was the last time you encountered evidence that genuinely made you reconsider something you believed? Because the people most vulnerable to confirmation bias are often the people who believe they're immune to it. And somewhere among all the assumptions, opinions, and beliefs we carry every day, there is almost certainly something we're wrong about. The question is, will we recognize it when the evidence appears? Or will we explain it away and continue believing what feels comfortable? Because sometimes the most important thing we can learn is how to be wrong. And sometimes that's where wisdom begins.